The Bulls get a signature win at Madison Square Garden. The Lakers get LeBron back sooner than expected, and the Thunder suffer a record-setting loss. It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On NBA. We have a great show for you today. I'm your new Friday co-host, Wes Goldberg. You might remember me from such programs as Tuesday's Locked On NBA show. I'm here with the Friday veteran, Adam Mares. However you may be listening, YouTube, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcast, thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. This episode is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. All right, on today's show, the Grizzlies set the record for the biggest margin of victory in NBA history. LeBron James is set to return earlier than expected, and the Raptors end the Bucks' 8-game win streak. But we begin today with a different win streak that's still going on in Phoenix, where the Suns beat the Pistons 114-103, and they passed the 2007 franchise record now with 18 straight wins. But the Pistons hung around thanks to Jeremy Grant's 34 points, but the Suns, without Devin Booker for the second straight game, had 7 players score in double figures. Landry Shamit's three-pointer with 1:57 left in the game was the dagger, putting Phoenix up by 10. And look at us, Adam. We're talking about the Suns. 18 straight wins will make you talk about a team, won't it?
Heck yeah, we'll talk about the Phoenix Suns. I mean, I think they are the best team in basketball. Not really a hot take when you haven't lost for a month and a half. They're great on both ends of the ball. I have to tip my hat to the Detroit Pistons tonight. I thought they played really hard. Pistons have been blown out a lot this season. They've looked really sloppy, and there were points in this game where you looked at them and thought, man, this is a really bad team that has a lot to learn about NBA basketball. But they competed all the way down the stretch and made Phoenix earn this one. But there's not a whole lot you can say bad about the Phoenix Suns and the way they execute in the fourth quarter and just the way they play connected on both ends of the court.
Yeah, I love you got to give your hat off to the Pistons a little bit. I love the Pistons broadcast. I don't know which one you were tuning into there, but they were like, you know what? We gave the Suns the best shot we had. Then they have to go to San Francisco tomorrow on the second night of a back-to-back, and now they're going to be tired. So kind of this is a win for the Detroit Pistons. And I was like, is that what it is? Is that what it's like when you're a Detroit Pistons fan nowadays?
You've covered Miami, you've covered Golden State, so you don't know the lean days, Wes. You don't know what it's like for
I covered those. I covered that 15-win season for Golden State when Steph broke his hand. I get it. But
there you go.
No, you got it. The Suns, 18 straight wins. This has been a really great week for them as far as media coverage, as far as people respecting what it is that they're doing, as far as breaking their own franchise records. They beat Golden State Tuesday night. They're going to play them again Friday night. Now, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how they're going to respond on that second night of back-to-back to the Pistons broadcast point. Like, I think the Suns were hoping to maybe get an easy win in this one, and the Pistons did hang around basically the entire game until the final 2 minutes when the Suns just sort of pulled away.
Yeah, they pushed them, and it does set up an interesting – it's funny when you get to this stratosphere where the Suns are now. They are in first place. They just beat the Golden State Warriors, but guess what? If you lose on Friday night to the Warriors, you drop to number 2 in the West, which is kind of crazy to think you're won 18 games in a row, but one loss would knock you down in the standings. You also run into the issue where you have a franchise record 18-game win streak. Now you're on the second night of a back-to-back. How hard do you want to push your team early, this early in the season, especially a team in Phoenix that really hasn't suffered injury luck, so far. And you're now dealing with your first one and Devin Booker, being cautious with that. So it'll be interesting how they approach that. And by the way, Monty Williams was asked about this in his post-game presser. And he said, we're not digging ditches. We're playing basketball. We don't need rest. So any indication they're going to take that game as another sort of measuring stick and try to further the gap they've built on the Warriors, not fall behind them.
No indication that Devin Booker is going to be available for that game. Probably not going to. He sat sidelines against Detroit in what looked like a dark brown smock. Not really sure what it was, but maybe he'll be dressed better in San Francisco. We'll see. All right, moving on to our next game here. The other late game, the Spurs earned a 114-83 win over the Portland Trailblazers. If you didn't stay up late enough to watch it, you didn't miss anything. Damian Lillard was out with an abdomen injury that has been given problems all season long, even, according to him, for years.
Right.
And it was announced Thursday that he's going to miss at least 10 days now with that
Yeah.
injury. He'll be reevaluated in 10 days. So that doesn't mean really anything other than just that. Portland's season only continues to get worse. Shout out to the Spurs. 6 players scoring double figures for them. They were led by DeJounte Murray, finished with 15 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds. But like I said, the story here is, just things getting continually worse for the Trailblazers.
Yeah, and this was not as close as it sounded. I know it doesn't sound close, a 31 point win, but there was
Right.
this was a 25-point game at half. Portland made a little bit of a third quarter run to make it somewhat interesting, but then of course it got broken right open again down the stretch. I agree with you. There's not a ton of takeaways from this game. Portland playing so shorthanded. They will pop up in the third segment when we talk about teams looking at the panic button. They may or may not make an appearance on that list. But my only real note I have for you, Wes, in this game, I don't understand when teams wear, as San Antonio did tonight, their Fiesta jerseys on the road. Those are home jerseys. You wear those for your home crowd. You take those into Portland. It just looks weird.
I already know that you and I are going to get along on this Friday show just because you're bringing up the jerseys in the first segment. I don't look, you're absolutely right. Like nobody in Portland cares about your cool set. Like the jersey itself is awesome. I'm a fan of the jersey, but like the Miami Heat, the team I cover over on Locked On Heat, they do that all the time with their mashup jerseys. Think of what you will about the concept. I'm a fan of it. I just like different in general, but why wear it on the road? They've worn it on the road more than they've worn at home. Granted, they've played like 23 of their first 20 games on the road this season, but yeah, I don't get it. I'm with you.
They look like the Flint Tropics out there tonight the whole time, and they were just running circles around Portland. So there you go.
Let's go now to New York City, where the Bulls held off a second half Knicks rally to earn a 119 to 115. The most entertaining game of the night for sure. Chicago led by DeMar DeRozan's 34 points, and they got 27 each from Zach LaVine and from Nikola Vucevic. The defense turned the Knicks over 18 times, which I thought was one of the swing factors in that game. But after falling behind by 21 points in that first half, New York used a 25-7 run in that third quarter. They got back into the game, and then they actually took the lead late in the game. 3 minutes left in the fourth. Julius Randle's shot gives them the lead, but DeRozan's layup with 20 seconds left seals the win for the Bulls. Now they're back to having the second best record in that Eastern Conference. Before zooming out in their place in the East, Adam, what were your takeaways from this game?
Well, first of all, it was a fantastic basketball game. And this is the third matchup, the third time these teams have played each other this year. All of them instant classics, some of the best games we've had all year. And it looked like it was going to be a laughter. You mentioned the 18 turnovers for the Knicks. They had 12 of those in the first half. Yeah. I thought Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso did a great job of disrupting the passing lanes and getting out in transition. And it looked like this one was going to be blown open. But as you mentioned, the Knicks stormed back. It was a great Madison Square Garden crowd. And the Knicks caught fire in that third quarter, and you could just see the sense of belief. First, they cut it to 15, then 10, then 5, and you could just see the momentum swelling in it, and it forced it to come down to the wire. And in the clutch, you got a bunch of guys that were super hot. DeMar DeRozan, 18 points in the fourth quarter, and a bunch of guys who were ice cold, including the Knicks execution, Lonzo Ball from the corners, and the Bulls ended up edging out. It was a beautiful game for about 45 minutes. An ugly game, the final three, but DeRozan managed to get 18 points in the fourth to pull out the win.
Yeah, not quite that awesome game, that just like basketball brilliance that we saw from the Knicks and the Nets a few days ago, where it was great in the last 3 minutes. This one was a little bit more clunky, to your point. But Chicago, zooming out a little bit now, they entered this game 8th in offensive rating, 6th in defensive rating. I thought their defense for most of the game, like that, the way that they just create turnovers and create points in transition in that way, they're 4th in net rating overall. Now they have quality wins in LA. A quality win over Denver, even though the Nuggets were without Jokic in that game, but still, we'll take it. You take it in Denver. They got a quality win, like I just said, against Brooklyn, and they have one from earlier this season against Dallas, and now this one against the Knicks, a Knicks team that just took the Nets to the last second of that game. So I don't know. If you're not taking the Bulls seriously at this point, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that is such a complete lineup. And what DeRozan is able to do at the end of these games, he's just got that clutch scoring mentality. You love to see him playing in games that matter now, as opposed to what was happening in San Antonio for the last couple of years. You got to love what Chicago's doing.
Well, I'll tell me if you like this comp. I think DeMar DeRozan is somewhat similar to what Chris Paul is in Phoenix. You think about Phoenix, they had DeAndre Ayton, they had Mikal Bridges, they got Devin Booker, all these guys that were very talented, but hadn't won. And you bring in a veteran. I know Chris Paul's more of a, on-ball facilitator, does this or that, but it's just the presence of a guy who's been through all of this, has won at high levels. I think DeRozan has a similar thing. Vucevic, even though he's not young, hasn't really been on a winning team before. Right. Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, these are very talented players who I think were missing one ingredient. And after the game, LaVine actually mentioned this. Speaking of DeMar DeRozan, he says he helps our team tremendously, especially if we're like frantic. I think it just gives the whole team a sense of deep breath. And Billy Donovan, by the way, said similar things about DeMar DeRozan and what he brings to this team. I 100% buy the Chicago Bulls. I don't know if they're going to be title contenders. You got to prove that in the playoffs. But as a regular season team, I 100% believe and buy into the way the pieces fit and just how connected they can be on both ends.
I love the DeMar DeRozan, Chris Paul comparison there too, because you talk to young players in the league and they absolutely idolize both of those players, both Chris Paul and DeMar DeRozan. Right. Like those are idols to those guys.
Let me get a couple quick little mini notes here, though, before we get out of here. Taj Gibson was tossed in this game early for back-to-back illegal screens.
Yes.
And he actually got tossed a little bit. I didn't think he did anything that warranted him to be thrown from the game. I thought it was a little bit quick. But more to the point, the illegal screens are like holding penalties in the NFL. You could call one on almost any possession. I thought Taj Gibson got a tough whistle on that. But as you look at, the league is experimenting with how do we make defense a little bit more possible. If you're going to call screens like they did tonight for Taj Gibson, make it across the board so that it takes away a little bit of the advantage perimeter players have. Right. I think it's an interesting point of emphasis that the NBA could look at if they wanted to. I think it's just Taj Gibson's old. They called fouls on him that were probably a little minor.
They called it on Alex Caruso on like the next possession after Taj Gibson got ejected. And Alex Caruso got like really upset. And I was like, dude, just pick your battles in here. One guy just got thrown out because of this.
So true, man. Refs were a little testy. I think that crowd tonight was a little testy, and then sometimes refs lose their mind with that. Kemba Walker out of the rotation, really interesting. We knew this was coming, but to get a DNP in a game like this, a little interesting. And then lastly, tonight featured Derek Jones Jr. playing the 5. He's one of the most interesting players to me, like role players of this season so far. And it also featured Julius Randle playing the 5, a really interesting. Like you think about small ball 5s, I guess Julius Randle has done this in the past, but Derek Jones Jr. breaking out with Chicago as a skinny stretch 5 is a really unique wrinkle.
Right. Portland not using role players to their potential. That's crazy. That's amazing.
Classic.
All right. Coming up, why the NBA is allowing LeBron James to come back to the Lakers sooner than maybe some people expected. But first, let's talk about our friends at Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam that's out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and helped them save over $100 million. So here it is. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now, truebill.com/lockedonnba. That's truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands of dollars a year. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, so please do subscribe. For your second listen, check out one of our great local podcasts for the Bulls' perspective on their win over the Knicks, or Locked On Suns for more coverage on the hottest team in the league, or either one of our podcasts with me over at Locked On Heat or Adam over on Locked On Nuggets. We're going to get to this LeBron stuff here in a minute. But first, the Raptors beat the Milwaukee Bucks 97-93, ending Milwaukee's 8-game win streak. Toronto was led by Fred VanVleet's 29 points. They also got 20 points from Pascal Siakam. A shout out to Scotty Barnes, the rookie who Raptors fans thought got snubbed for Rookie of the Month. He responded by going 3 for 6 from three-point range. He wasn't supposed to be able to shoot threes, Adam. Meanwhile, the Bucks were without Giannis, who was resting on the second night of a back-to-back. They were also still without center Brook Lopez, who has undergone surgery to address the back injury that has kept him out for basically all season. And it was announced on Thursday that he's going to be out indefinitely. Now, according to ESPN, Zach Lowe, The team is hopeful that Brook Lopez can return by the end of the regular season, but the Bucks also signed DeMarcus Cousins this week while they await for Lopez to return. DeMarcus did not play in this game. Adam, how much of a concern is this for the Bucks?
I think it's a pretty big concern. I mean, Brook Lopez is a huge piece of what made them successful over the last several seasons. Yeah, so he's such a big part of what they do, and to lose him, and even if he does come back, you miss the entire season where you gain your rhythm. You don't know if your conditioning will be there. I think it is a pretty significant loss for them. Do I think it takes them out of title contention? No, but it certainly lowers their odds, I think, just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who in the playoffs, sometimes in certain matchups, he's not ideal, right? They went ahead and used Bobby Portis at the 5 tonight. They could use Giannis at the 5, obviously, but in certain matchups, he's exactly what you want. You want a guy who could space the floor, who can give you some rim protection, obviously some rebounding. You need all your guys if you want to repeat as an NBA champion, and obviously that's what the Milwaukee Bucks want to do this season. It's just going to be really hard, and we don't know what DeMarcus Cousins is going to be able to give them, right? And you're kind of, you're without your starting front court in Giannis and Brook Lopez tonight, but you're like one injury away from doing what you had to do tonight, playing Bobby Portis at the 5, and I don't think that's ideal.
I mean, you look at the matchup with the 76ers, I think would be the one you look out east, at least. To get to the West, there's a lot more teams with some more competent bigs that you probably need big bodies for, but that would be the matchup. And, they're a pretty versatile team that could do a lot of different things. That makes them slightly less versatile. Tonight, by the way, the Bucks had just 16 assists. I know going back to the game here a little bit, but it's kind of crazy. Giannis, very short list of players where if you take them out of the lineup, the team looks completely different. Identity completely lost. Only 16 assists tonight. I think it was the lowest they've had in several seasons. Really, really weird night for them.
Yeah. All right. Let's go now to Memphis, where the Grizzlies beat the Thunder.
Wow.
152-79, 152 points to 79 points. They set the record for the biggest margin of victory in NBA history. Here's Locked On Grizzlies host Sean Coleman with more.
Good evening to each of you. I'm not sure how your NBA team may be doing tonight, but my team, the Memphis Grizzlies, yes, the Memphis Grizzlies that have lost 6 games now by more than 20 points each this season. Yeah, those Memphis Grizzlies just set the NBA record for the biggest win differential in league history. A 73-point win over the Oklahoma City Thunder. An unbelievable record-breaking performance for the Grizzlies, setting the franchise record for most points in a game, most assists in a game, and yes, once again, the largest victory margin in NBA history. Jaren Jackson Jr. had another historical performance himself, but it was the bench. It was a complete team effort from the Grizzlies. 8 players were a plus 20 tonight. 5 players were a plus 39. Santi Aldama, in the biggest game that he's had in his career by far, a career high 18 points. Everyone on the bench, 9 players in double figures, a complete team victory. And to remind you once again, all of this happened without Ja Morant. On a historically amazing game, a historical night for the Memphis Grizzlies. This and much more on the post-game edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. 73 points. 73! Go Grizz!
So there's Sean Coleman with your recap in a very nice cable knit sweater, might I add. All right. That's the recap. I don't know if you have notes about this game. My big thing, Adam, is, well, go ahead. Do you have notes on this game?
Not really. I mean, I just have a bunch of Grizzlies set a record 62.5% from the field. And also, I know where you're going to go with this, so I'll set you up. The Thunder last year lost by 57. They trailed in a game by 67. So this is, sadly, it broke their old record by quite a bit, right, but they still have 2 of the worst losses of the last 2 decades.
Isn't this what they wanted? Like, I mean, like, the thing is, I think this would kind of break a lot of teams, right? Like, this could like really set back from a confidence perspective, I think, like a lot of basketball teams, but I don't know that this even like weirdly matters. It's like a weird record now to own. Like, you're the team that lost by 73 points, but when you assemble that roster, you're kind of welcoming this kind of night. And I know that they were a little frisky and they beat the Lakers a couple times and whatever. That's obviously now going to even out. They might, like, I don't think they're going to win many more games this season. I didn't think they would win more than 10 this year. They're probably going to do that at least. But this is what Sam Presti wanted. Let's just be super awful. Let's just try to get as many draft picks as possible. In a way, the Thunder kind of win tonight.
I don't know about that. What I will say is two things. One, this screws up your stats for an entire season. I mean, we're going to look in the standings, and Memphis is going to be like a top 5 net rating team now, and it's going to be like, hold on, how do we account for this? But also, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't play tonight. Giddey didn't play tonight. According to Twitter, Paolo Banchero did not play tonight for the I don't know if you saw that. There was a screw up in the headline. Paolo Banchero did not play for the Thunder tonight.
That's really funny.
But I do think you're onto something here, though, about you can lose by too much, and it sends a message to your team. Does Shai Gilgeous enjoy setting records in back-to-back seasons for giant losses? I mean, no. I do think you sort of skate on thin ice when you come up with these plans, because you lose your players just a little bit, and it just never comes back.
Yeah, I'm not on board with losing by 73 points. Call me crazy.
Me neither.
All right, let's get to this LeBron stuff. The NBA announced Thursday that LeBron has been cleared to return to the lineup for the Lakers game against the LA Clippers on Friday. This after a brief stint in the NBA's health and safety protocols. In the days after Thanksgiving, the league introduced stricter rules for coronavirus testing, and LeBron on Tuesday registered a positive test before the Lakers played a game in Sacramento. Since then, LeBron has registered several negative tests in order to clear his way to a return and avoid the extended absence that a lot of people expected. In the NBA statement, the league said, quote, James was originally placed in the protocols on Tuesday, protocols with a capital P, November 30th, after a series of tests delivered conflicting results, including an initial positive test that was collected on November 29th. Additional testing confirmed that he is not a positive case. So, Adam, what do you make of this NBA decision?
To me, look, there's nobody that enjoys putting the tinfoil hat on about Lakers getting the benefit of the doubt more than myself. I would say, though, by everything the NBA is stating here, this is not too surprising. He had a false positive, and now we have multiple negatives. So to me, it makes a little bit of sense. I don't know that there's anything nefarious here. The only thing I don't like is LeBron James himself put out his "something fishy is going on" tweet, which I absolutely hate, because there are too many layers to this that could be misconstrued and this or that, and then just adds the conspiracy angle back into all of this when it didn't need to be, that fuel didn't need to be added to the fire. To me, he tested positive once, tested negative 8 straight times. I think he's probably negative.
Right. I think, unfortunately, Lakers fans are probably going to be like, look, the coronavirus doesn't affect us. We're the Lakers. We're Showtime. Told you.
Right.
And then you've got everybody else in the NBA saying, like, everything always goes well for the Lakers. Of course, Adam Silver is helping you out. Look, LeBron James is vaccinated, or at least he said he has been. Said he's vaccinated. And according to this, he is. And because all you had to do is register, I think it was 2 negative tests within a 24-hour span or something like that. He did 8. He was like, I see your 2, I'll raise you 8. Right. And yeah, he should be able to play. And look, I'm not conspiracy guy at this. Like, it all makes plenty of sense when you kind of look at the details here. But even like this wouldn't be just, even if it were a conspiracy, even if it was just a bunch of fish emojis, kind of fishy here. We just had this Rolling Stone report about, the NBA kind of looking the other way at Giannis in Milwaukee in the NBA Finals last year. We had that whole mix-up with Kevin Durant last season too. Right. So there's stuff here that's a little bit like the NBA isn't immune to just mixing stuff up a little bit, being a little confusing, or just flatly looking the other way to their stars. It wouldn't be just LeBron James. So this is just the way it is.
One thing I will say, though, the Nuggets have 3 players right now in the protocols, including Austin Rivers, who is confirmed test positive. And according to his father, Doc Rivers, is experiencing some pretty severe symptoms, even though he is vaccinated. Kobe White is out. There's a handful of players around the league right now that have tested positive. So it hasn't made the headlines like it did a year ago, but sort of quietly, it is becoming a storyline for several teams so far, already 20 games into the season.
Yeah, it's another advantage if you're a fully vaccinated team, right?
Correct.
So, and I think there is a difference, right, between like Austin Rivers, who is symptomatic, versus LeBron, who is reportedly asymptomatic. I think there's different things there, but all right, LeBron's going to play Friday. Coming up, we talk about 5 teams that might have to push the panic button. That's coming up next. But first, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar. This holiday season, grab a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. That's Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with a decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and it's high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. They have a ton of flavors. You're going to have a hard time choosing. Well, you have raspberry, mint brownie, cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, whatever it is. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all of your holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. So throw one in your jacket or your purse. You never know when you're going to need it. Because it's a season of peace and love, don't bring up your favorite Built Bar flavor at family parties. People are so passionate about their favorite flavor, you might get into a fight with your aunt over your favorite Built Bar. Are you friends with Santa? Well, tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars in those stockings. If you want to cozy up with something warm, get in the holiday. Here's the holiday secret: dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. I like that idea. And like some of those marshmallowy treats around the holidays, you can get your hands on Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate. They taste great. You're not going to believe that they're filled with protein. So here's the offer. Go to Built.com. Use that promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off on your order. Again, Built.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off. All right, now that we've recapped the action in the news, let's take a trip to the panic room and talk about 5 teams that could or should be hitting the panic button. Adam, you are the official overseer of the panic button. What's the first team on your list?
There's a handful of teams that just narrowly missed the cut here of my top 5 panic teams. My Nuggets, one of those, who again dealing with an incredible amount of injuries and COVID protocols right now. They're down to just 10 players. They even they got that hardship exception, but they did not make my top 5. Number 5, the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers. There you go. The Pacers are 3-12 in games that featured clutch time, which is pretty remarkable. It's by far the most losses, close losses. They've got several overtime losses, and they are sitting in the standings right now, third to last in the Eastern Conference. This was a team that, obviously, adding Carlisle, you expected, okay, there's going to be the Carlisle bump. His teams usually do well in the regular season. This is not a rebuilding team. This is a team that's ready to sort of push the chips in, and here they are, several games out of the play-in. And then they have some bad losses. They lost to Denver without Jokic. They lost to the Lakers without Anthony Davis, the Wizards without Bradley Beal. So to me, they are a team that I don't think they're hitting the panic button. There's, I think, a neutral net rating on the season, so they've just lost a lot of close ones, but I think they sort of they're looking at it. They see it over there. It's flashing.
Yeah. That's the funny thing about the Pacers. People have been talking about, splitting up Sabonis and Turner and maybe blowing it up a little bit and tanking because you don't really have any star to build around and stuff like that. But the Pacers survive by sort of being that middle class Eastern Conference team, right? Always contending for the playoffs, getting into that first round. Even if you're first round out, you get that playoff revenue in a small market. There's been a ton written about that stuff. And that has been sort of the business model of that, or like as that organization runs as a business. The tricky part about running your business like that is if you just take even a minor step back, all of a sudden you're sort of on the outside looking in and you're not getting any of that revenue. You're not doing any of that stuff. And I don't know what you're building around if you're the Pacers anymore. It just felt like this step back was bound to happen at some point. I always thought they were overachieving the last couple of years, to be honest. And I don't know. I don't even know what the panic button looks like for Indiana because I don't see how it's just not in their ethos to just blow it up. I don't know what you do.
I agree with you that I don't think they're going to press this panic button, but it is when you look at they're 4 games out of 10th place right now for the play-in. The one reason I don't think it's full panic is they do have a positive. They're a +1 differential right now, which is a little weird. They're 17th in offense, 13th in defense. They're a middle-class team. Maybe some of these 50-50 games flip the other way and they crawl back into this, but I expected them to be a play-in team, and right now they're looking like a high lottery team.
What's the next team on your list?
The Toronto Raptors, who got a win tonight. So
it's not quite panic. I don't know if the sad trombone sound works here.
It works though. It works
for
me. They do get the win tonight, so they improve to 10-13, just right ahead of the Indiana Pacers. But they're another team that I look at and I go, are we confident? They have a lot of players I like. I mean, they have one of the top 3 or 4 number of role players I like. They just don't have a centerpiece that I think ties it all together. And I'm not sure. Tonight, by the way, they win at home. They break a 5-game home losing streak, which is kind of crazy. They're just 3-8 at home. None of that stuff adds up. And it's not really, they've had somewhat of a favorable home opportunities and haven't taken advantage of them. I worry they're not going to make the play-in.
Yeah, I guess this is a matter of expectations with Toronto because in some respects they're rebuilding, and other,
Yeah,
it's like, hey, Siakam, Van Vliet, like these are guys who we know what they're all about now. Nick Nurse, championship winning coach. I love the pieces that they have though. So if your expectations were, hey, playoffs or bust, then yeah, I guess you should have your finger hovering over that panic button. But I always just looked at them as saying this was sort of like a rebuild year. Like last year didn't count because you played in
weird.
Tampa, and anything that happens in Tampa doesn't really count.
Right,
So I love the Scotty Barnes pick. OG Anunoby didn't play
right.
against Milwaukee. He's been out, but he's been awesome for them when he's been on the court. I guess my question with Toronto is like, what do you do with Pascal Siakam? Because he's a little bit older than people think. He's not
Right.
really in this window of these younger. I don't know. Like, is he the guy that you want to build around? Can you build around Scotty Barnes if Siakam is there? Like, I don't know. I think that's the question. I don't know that any decision can be made right now, but I think that's a question worth asking.
I agree with you. They're a rebuilding team, but I think that they were a team that should have been competing for at least the play-in,
Yeah.
and the fact that they're a little bit below that. I mean, you're right, young players. You'd love to get Scotty Barnes into a play-in situation, maybe even a playoff, and get him that experience. Gary Trent Jr., same thing, a young
Yeah.
guy. You'd love to kind of build that chemistry. So those two teams, Pacers and Raptors, they're eyeing it. I don't think they're hitting it. These next three, I think, are hitting it. My next one up, this might feel like a little bit of a hot take. The Portland Trailblazers.
I'm with you on Portland. I'm 100% with you on Portland. There is nothing to feel good about if you're a Trailblazers fan. I know Damian Lillard didn't play, but like this is you had Neil Olshey saying that this was a scheme problem, not a roster problem, and it is very clear that this is a roster
Right.
problem right now. Like I just don't see a way out of whatever this is.
Well, you never like it when you have, is it the ingredients or is it the cook? You don't ever like when
Right.
you have that conflict. Of course, you've got an investigation going on right now.
Yes.
Damian Lillard is out. And by the way, it's no small thing to say there's an investigation going out. When a team needs to make some kind of move or change some things up, but you have a management group that's sort of on hold, that's always tough. It's a distraction, and it could mean that you don't get to make the best, long-term decisions. But Lillard is out for 10 days, and I don't know if they're going to win. They've got Boston. They've got the Clippers. They're at Golden State. They've got Minnesota. I mean, there's an opportunity you can grab one or two of those, but I think there's a better opportunity that you go 1-3, 0-4 while he's out of there. You're already sitting in the 9th seed in the West, a very competitive West. But here's why I think the panic button is ready to be pushed. They changed up their defensive scheme, tried to get more aggressive, and it is not working. They were the 4th worst defense coming in tonight. I bet that probably goes down a little bit. They might even fall in the standings. And anytime you're in the company of Detroit, Oklahoma City, Orlando, those teams, you are not looking like a playoff team. I would be very, very concerned if I was a Portland Trailblazers fan.
Yeah, because this is, I mean, if there were any mix of events to push Damian Lillard finally out of town, this is it, right? Like, he's like, look, like to your point, there's an investigation going on. Nobody in like above Damian Lillard is going to make any kind of decision because I guess everybody's sort of in this holding pattern. But Damian Lillard can make a decision. Damian Lillard could go to whoever's in charge right now and just be like, trade me. I'm out of here. This isn't working. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he can't. Like, if anybody can do it now and maybe force something to happen in the short term, it would be him. So,
Or
yeah,
even if not, you just end up having Damian Lillard sitting there with a bad team and fighting for play-in spots again, which is just not great. I mean, Damian Lillard is in the center of his prime right now, and this is a team that does not seem worthy of a player of his caliber. But we'll see what happens. Number 2 on my list. These next 2 get even worse, though. Believe it or not, these ones, the panic button I think is already being hit. The Sacramento Kings got a new coach. They've lost 10 of 14. I know what you're going to say. I didn't expect them to be a playoff team, this or that. They have been in rebuild mode for far too long to say we are still in rebuild mode once again. You got De'Aaron Fox. You should be showing some signs of turning a corner. When are they going to turn the corner? I love their young pieces. I love Halliburton. Davion Mitchell's my favorite player in this draft. Not the best, just my personal favorite. But yet here they are again, 20 games into the season, and they are already 3 or 4 games out of the play-in spot. I with very little signs that they're going to turn the corner. I'm concerned that this might just be a team stuck in purgatory for the 20th straight season.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what your expectation was or my expectation or anybody's expectation because ownership had the playoff or bust expectation, right? And so I think they are maybe starting to push that panic button. It just De'Aaron Fox's numbers have dropped across the board.
Right.
Tyrese Halliburton, he hasn't taken that leap that I think a lot of Kings fans had hoped. Davion Mitchell's been. I'm with you. He's one of my favorite players in this draft, but he's not a guy that's gonna swing a team's season right now. And then you've got Rashawn Holmes is a nice player. Harrison Barnes can get you points, could get you buckets, but I don't know. The Marvin Bagley thing was weird. Has been since they picked him. It has been even more weird this season.
Well, just count up the lottery picks they've had over the last 5 seasons. You've got Bagley, you've got Fox, you've got Mitchell, you've got Halliburton.
Right.
You should be showing something when you get that many good picks. Who, by the way, with the exception of Bagley, who is his own case, those other 3 guys are good players. Maybe
Right.
not great, maybe pick too high, this or that, but they're good players. And the fact that it hasn't really turned over just yet, it just feels like bad organizations that are stuck in purgatory.
De'Aaron Fox kind of symbolizes everything that's going, because remember 2 years ago, is this one of the best 5-point guards in the league?
Right,
This guy's a
right.
future all-star, all this stuff. And he just sort of plateaued. And every time it feels like the Kings take a step forward, they just sort of level off a little bit. It just feels like they can never get over that hump. I'm not sure what it is.
Rashawn Holmes is good too. I'm going to give a little shout out to Rashawn Holmes. My number one team, this is the easiest one though. There's one team that it's like a sad panic button. You might actually not even hit it. You just sit there in your own demise. The New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah.
Now there's one little silver lining I'm going to give here. One silver lining before I get to all the negative. They have had by far the toughest strength of schedule in the NBA. The toughest. And of course have been shorthanded. Brandon Ingram for a lot of the stretch and Zion Williamson. But they're the worst defense in the NBA. Their net rating is indistinguishable from the 4 tanking teams. They are not a tanking team, but Oklahoma City, Houston, Detroit, Orlando, if you look at just the net ratings in the NBA, there is a huge drop-off between the top 25 and the bottom 5. And one of those teams is trying to make the playoffs this year. And that is really, really bad sign. And then worst of all, of course, Zion Williamson was supposed to play today, did not participate in practice. A little bit of weird circumstances, said his foot was hurting. The team says they think it's a minor setback, no new imaging or anything like that. But I got to say, we originally thought Zion was going to be ready to start the season. Then we find out there's this surgery. Then he's delayed. Now he's delayed again. Just there's not good vibes in New Orleans, and the season might already be out of reach for them as they fall to 6-18, 7 games out of the 10 seed right now.
Yeah, when you say it's not good vibes, that's really well said. It's you just get just a bunch of lying, a bunch of kind of hiding, because as soon as Zion has an injury, everybody's like, they're gonna freak out. Well, you know what? There's a reason why everybody's gonna freak out, because it's a problem, and when it happens, people panic, and that's why we're pushing the panic button right now. It's an issue. You're a franchise player. Everything revolves around Zion, right? You traded away good pieces like Drew Holiday and Lonzo Ball. You let walk away, guys who I actually think would be perfect fits with Zion. You let them go because you're building around Zion. You want to get a little younger. You want to accumulate draft picks, etc. And if that guy's not there, I don't really know what the plan is anymore. And you mentioned how they're in the net rating with these tanking teams. Whether they're trying to or not, they're a tanking team now. They're going to be inadvertently tanking, because I don't see this getting better. Even when Zion comes back, there's not a lot to love on that roster right now.
What's weird is there are these little pockets like Valanciunas, 3-point specialist Valanciunas shooting lights out.
Points. Yeah.
You've got Brandon Ingram now back. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a piece there. You've got some guys that are kind of interesting, but it's just shrouded in the fact that they are already almost so far behind in the standings that you never give up 20 games into the season, but you look at that mountain you have to climb already, and then add in the fact that Zion, a quarter of the way into the season, still isn't playing. And by the way, updates are happening after practice. This isn't a thing that was like, hey, we're not sure if he's going to practice. It's like, hey, everybody expects him to practice. Oh, he's not. It just sends some weird messages about what's going on there.
And when you're already kind of facing this uphill battle, don't rush him back. I mean, I know this is a setback and stuff like that, and I guess that's what they're doing, but I think you just get him healthy. It doesn't really matter what you do. What's the difference between doing this or finishing 10 games out of the playoffs? I don't know, man. Just put just put this season away. Just put the season away if you're the Pelicans.
Poor Pelicans fan.
All right, that'll do it for us today. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On NBA wherever you listen to podcasts for 30 minutes of the NBA's top stories every day. Smash that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Adam and I will be back here next Friday. In the meantime, you can find me over at Locked On Heat. Adam's over at Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all of your gambling needs. It's free and it's available on all platforms. Have a great weekend, everybody.